Is December too late to apply to law school? If you haven't finished your applications by now, are you already behind the curve? Should you just wait until next year, or can you still apply to start school in the fall? Let's talk about it. For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery, and I'm the founder here at Barrier Breakers, where we specialize in working with first-generation immigrant and minority college and law school applicants. And today, we're talking about law school application timing. Specifically, we're talking about, is December too late? Now, I know it's the holiday season, and everyone is really busy preparing for presents and family gatherings, but if you are one of those people that's still working on your law school applications, you might be wondering, can I balance everything and get it in before Christmas, before the new year? How important is timing? Am I already too late? What should I do? I want to talk to you a little bit about law school application timing and ease some of your concerns and worries. I know that there's a lot of things on the internet that will tell you, of course, you're too late, don't even try, don't bother. But listen, I've been doing law school admissions consulting professionally for the last 9 years, and every single year we have students that apply around this time in December and in January, and depending on who you are, and depending on the context of your applications, and depending on what schools you're applying to, December is absolutely not too late. We have tons of students who have gotten into fantastic schools, Harvard and Yale and all sorts of amazing programs with scholarships, and they've applied around now. So that can be you, but it depends. And that's a completely lawyerly answer, right? It depends. It depends on context, but it really does. So today we're going to talk about some of the factors that go into deciding whether it's completely fine for you to apply in December or whether you should consider seriously perhaps submitting your applications next application cycle so that you can maximize your scholarships and maximize your admissions. It is true. Law school admissions are on a rolling application cycle. When you apply in the fall, you increase your odds, you increase your likelihood of getting a lot of scholarship money, you increase your likelihood of being accepted, especially if you're a student that is at or below the medians for either GPA or LSAT. But if you're listening to this video, we have already passed the fall. So we've kind of passed that applying early in the application cycle window. But here's the thing. We often talk about applying early and we talk about applying late. But, in the middle, there's just regular. There's just applying, right? You're neither early, but you're also not really that late. You're just average. Some schools receive the bulk of their applications in December and January, which means that you're not a special snowflake. You're not too early or too late. You're just part of the pack. So how can you maximize being part of the pack? Being regular, if you will. The first thing is it really depends on what your LSAT score and your GPA are. What that means is if you are someone who is applying below the stated medians, below the GPA and LSAT medians, it is best for you to apply early in the cycle because law schools give out their spots on a rolling basis and you are evaluated holistically and comparatively, which means that they're also looking at all of the other applications that have come in. So by this time in the cycle, depending on the school, it's a lot harder to get in if you are someone that's below the medians, or if you get in, it's a lot less likely you're going to get any scholarship money. On the flip side, if you're someone that has a fantastic LSAT score, if you're someone that has a fantastic GPA, and they're above the medians, you are still going to be a strong candidate in December. You absolutely should still apply, and you may even still get scholarship money. So it really does depend on the context. For example, if you're a student that has a score in the 170s and you're applying to mid-tier schools because of geography or family reasons or institutional priorities that really align with yours, then you should still feel very confident submitting a strong application with strong essays and feel confident that you will still be able to get favorable law school admission results. If you're right on the line, let's say you're right at the medians of the schools that you're applying to, you can still apply, but understand that it may impact some of your scholarship, but it might not. Right? And that's the thing with law school admissions. I can't sit here and give you a black and white, yes, absolutely, you're going to get in with money. Absolutely, you're going to get denied. That's not how law school admissions work. Anyone that pretends to say that is probably lying to you. It is very contextual. It definitely depends. There's a lot of gray. But if it's really important to you to start law school in the fall, then you should feel comfortable submitting your applications. And that's something that is really important to discuss. What are your priorities? For some of you, the reason why you want to go to law school in the fall is because of family reasons. Maybe you're already moving to a new city. Maybe it's part of your family planning. Maybe you have a certain scholarship or employer-sponsored amount of tuition benefits that expire at a certain time. There can be lots of reasons for why you have to go to law school right now. But for some of you, timing is really just emotional. You feel like you want to start law school in the fall, but you're also in a great job and you also have a great support system. And it doesn't truly matter if you start law school in the fall of 2024 or the fall of 2025. And if that's you, then you really have to weigh how important are things like scholarships to me. If you're telling me I'm in a great job and I love my life right now, I'm getting older, I am 27 and I don't want to start law school when I'm 28, that's not a very good reason. Right? And scholarships are very important to me, then it might make sense to wait and maximize your scholarships by applying in the fall. Because truthfully, there's no difference between starting law school at 26 or 27 or 28. You will be just fine regardless. I went to law school, I was very young when I went to law school, but some of my classmates were in their 30s and they're thriving and they're women, they've decided to have children and they were still able to balance that with their career, even going to law school in their 30s. So I don't want you to let external or societal pressures about where you should be in your career at a certain age dictate something as large as your law school alumni community and your pedigree and your scholarship money and the amount of loans you take out, because those things have very real consequences. Waiting 12 months will probably not have any very real consequences in your life unless you have one of those aforementioned reasons, like I have 4 years of eligibility to get law school paid for, so I really do need to kind of get on the ball. That is a very valid reason, and you should absolutely take advantage of that because, like I said, things like scholarships and loans and debt, those things do have long-term impact and consequences. Now, there's other reasons why applying in December might not be a bad idea. There are a lot of schools that have early decision too. So I've talked in previous videos about the difference between early action, which is non-binding, and early decision, which is binding, and some of the pros and cons if you should apply to a law school in a binding early decision program. So definitely check out those videos if you haven't. But if you are applying to a law school that has an early decision December or even January ED2 deadline, then you're absolutely fine. They wouldn't have an early decision 2 program with a December and January deadline if they don't want you to apply during those times. And it's binding, so it has a little bit of a different feel than if you're just applying in the regular rolling admissions process. So if you have made the decision that applying early decision to law school makes a lot of sense for you, and you're applying in one of those later early decision 2 deadlines in December or in January, it is a perfectly reasonable plan, and it is not too late to apply to law school in December. Now, the other thing to take into consideration is school norms. There are some schools, Yale is a perfect example of this, where there are no benefits to applying early. Yale does a special type of application process where they involve faculty readers, and they tend to read later. And so if you apply to law school in November or December, it really doesn't make a big difference to Yale at all because they're not going to render decisions in November or December. And there are other schools, Harvard is one of them, that has certain staggered release dates, right? And so there are some schools where applying later, again, especially if you're applying at or above the medians for LSAT and GPA, if you have strong materials, there are some schools where it truly actually does not make a difference to wait. And speaking of strong materials, I would much rather you submit a strong application in December with finished, polished essays, with all of your letters of recommendation, applying to the scholarships that you need to in December, than rushing a half-assed application in October or September because someone told you you needed to apply in September. You're going to get denied if you have a half-assed application. I don't really care what your LSAT score is or your GPA is. Having a strong application is so important. Because this is your first impression. You do not get a second chance to make a great first impression in your application materials. And if you submit sloppy applications, you are just rushing a denial. And there's really no benefit to that. I'd much rather you submit a very strong application and apply a little bit later. We have students that are at Harvard Law that are at tons of great schools who applied in December and January because their application materials were stellar. They took the time, they made sure that they had everything in line. They made sure that their essays really spoke to who they are, conveyed why law school and why now. They wrote beautiful supplemental and diversity statements, and they made sure that they were putting their best foot forward, and the schools honored that. And they accepted them, even though they applied in December and January. So don't let someone tell you that you can't apply to law school in December or January. That's insane. There are lots of people who apply to law school in December and January, and they're thriving in lots of fantastic law schools. There's a lot of fear-mongering that can happen on the internet. Yes, it's true that you do increase your chances of scholarship and admission if you apply early in the fall, but the corollary is not true. If you apply in December and January, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get accepted or you're not going to get scholarships. It really does depend on the context. And the last thing I will say is that this application cycle in particular, the 2023 to 2024 application cycle, is moving slower than we have seen application cycles move before. And there are so many factors. First off, many people have had disruptions in their application process because of the law school admission test. There have been lots of things that have happened, from the August test, September, October. I mean, honestly, there have just been a lot of things that have happened. And so this year, we're seeing more and more students who would have been ready to hit submit in October not applying until November or December because they've had to retake their exam. There were proctor issues. There were all sorts of things that have happened, and that has delayed their process. We're seeing more and more students who are making the decision to take the January LSAT this year because of everything that's happened with the LSAT exam in the fall. And so this year in particular, I would say is not as dire or as stressful as other years in terms of applying early because there are just more students that are not applying early, despite their best intentions. The additional thing is that we had the Supreme Court ruling in June, which has completely changed the way that admissions are going to happen this year. And law school admissions offices are figuring it out. They're having new policies, new protocols, new way of doing things. We've seen more essays, new essays, different kinds of prompts. There are so many changes that are happening in this particular application cycle. And as a result, it is moving slower. This is a year where law school admissions offices are really going to try to take their time. They want to get it right. They want to make sure that they are still committed to diversity, to building an inclusive class while following the letter of the law. And also, they don't live in a bubble. Sometimes we think, oh, the law schools don't know what's happening with the LSAT exam. Like, yes, they do. They do. They've heard it. They've heard it all. They know it all. They talk. There's nothing that happens in the law school admissions world that the law school admissions officers and deans and directors are not privy to. So they understand that this has been a very stressful, very unusual cycle for applicants, as well as all of the things that they're dealing with internally in order to build the most diverse and inclusive class they can following the letter of the law. And so for all of those reasons, like I said, this cycle is just going to be a little slower. Does that mean you should wait to put in your application until February? No, please don't do that. That's not a great idea. I can't co-sign that. But what that does mean is that if you are finishing your applications right now and you're really stressed because you think you've missed some boats, you've not missed the boat. The boat is still waiting for you. You can still get on the boat. It's still a lovely boat. It will still take you to the beautiful destination that you are hoping to go to. This is still a fine time to apply to law school. And if you're like, okay, but I haven't started, then we should probably have a conversation, right? There's a difference between I haven't started, but I have a 174 in my LSAT. Let's talk about it. We do have some fast track packages that we can work with you to get your applications ready to submit in January. If you're saying I haven't started and I haven't started studying for the LSAT exam, I would suggest waiting at that point, right? If January is going to be your very first LSAT score, I would highly consider applying in the fall of next year so that you can have the best application process that you can, so that you can give yourself time to retake the LSAT if you need to, so that you can make sure that you are not rushing this process. I always say we don't make long-term decisions based off of short-term emotions. And for most people, this feeling of I have to apply right now, it's a short-term emotion. There's not really long-term life consequences on the decision to apply right now. However, where you go to law school, rushing the process and then getting into a law school that's okay, but not nearly as great as a law school you could have gotten into if you had waited, that doesn't make sense, right? Why would you choose to go into $100,000 more debt to go to a mid-tier law school when you could have just waited 9 months. I mean, we're really talking about 9 months at this point. Submitted your applications with a wonderful score, with strong essays, get a scholarship to a wonderful law school, set your life up, your career, your future. That's huge consequences. And you will be kicking yourself if, you realize 20 years from now, wow, I could have gone to that law school, but I really just didn't feel like staying in my job for another year. Or I really just didn't feel like being a year older. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So, really consider your emotions. Consider whether or not applying right now makes the most sense for you, your career, your family, the financial goals and context that you have. But if you are ready, if you have a strong application, if your essays are great and you're just feeling a little skittish about hitting submit this month, this is your permission to hit submit this month. And I wish you all the best in your application cycle. If you have any questions, you can always submit them to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. Make sure that you are following us, subscribing to our YouTube channel and our podcast, Break Into Law School. We do have several ways of working with you, even through the rest of this year and in January, whether that's our essay editing, whether that's some of our 4-week rush packages. We do have a winter start package, so there's lots of different ways that we can still support you on this application journey. And of course, if you have an LSAT fee waiver, our Master Your Personal and Diversity Statement, the Master Your Soft Factors package course is 100% free to you. So if you haven't already gotten that and you have an LSAT fee waiver, let this be my Christmas present to you. We would love, love, love to work with you on it. And if you are someone that's listening to this and you're trying to figure out where to give your end of the year charitable donations, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. All money goes towards the Barrier Breakers Scholarship and allowing us to work with more students on a pro bono and sliding scale basis. So you can find the link below or just go to barrier-breakers/donors. We would absolutely love to have you partner with us in giving the gift of law school admission consulting to you. So guys, if I don't see you before, have a very, very, very happy holiday season. Happy Hanukkah if you're celebrating. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and of course, a fantastic, fantastic New Year.